What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for Supergirl Season 4, Episode 7, titled, Rather the Fallen Angel. So I've been rather critical of Season 4 so far, and the reason for that is because it's not a very good season in my opinion. If you look at my reviews, not a single one of them has gotten over a 7 out of 10. In fact, the best episode of the season until this point is a 6.8 out of 10, which is a terrible score for the best episode of any given season. It's a bad score for any episode in general, but this week, I'm happy to say Supergirl Season 4 has finally churned out its first good episode. It's not a great episode, it still has all the flaws that Supergirl automatically has in this season, but it has a lot of great things about it that make it a not bad episode and a generally pretty good episode. So I'll go over what I think, why I think it's a good episode in this review, and what it does better than previous episodes. So, the main storyline of this episode, well, there were two of them. There was the one with Supergirl and Manchester Black, and then the one with James Olsen and their Children of Liberty, but the two storylines definitely did collide at the climax of the episode. So, first of all, Supergirl and Manchester Black storyline, well, up until the twist ending where it turns out that he was betraying her the whole time, he set the whole thing up. There wasn't really much to it. I mean, I did like the back and forth between the two, but other than that, not really too much to the storyline, but that's not really a complaint, because there was a twist at the end that it turns out this whole thing was set up by Manchester Black, and he betrays Supergirl and hands her over to the Children of Liberty. I did like that twist. I did kind of see it coming, because when he asked her to hand him the stun grenade, I expected him to do something with it, like against Supergirl. I thought it would be right in that moment, but it turns out it was later. But that definitely did give away that he is betraying her. Nonetheless, it was a good twist just because I like what they did with that. It makes Manchester Black more less of a superhero and more of an anti-hero if he's going for that. Obviously, him killing all these people makes him an anti-hero, but I think that this twist to the storyline definitely made this storyline much more interesting. Just in general, I like what they're doing with Manchester Black. Obviously, he's very different from the comics in basically every single way. He doesn't have the same skin color. He doesn't have the powers he has in the comics. His goals are completely different. On the show, he's not really a villain. He's more of an anti-hero. So basically, completely different characters other than the logo and his name. The UK logo, which he did get that new armor in this episode, although he just slapped it on his chest. I have no idea how he did that, but he did that, and it looks cool. But Manchester Black, I like what they're doing, and the reason I like the changes from the comics is because I don't really like Manchester Black in the comics, or he wasn't in that one movie, and he was fine. I didn't really like him that much, so these changes are kind of welcome, or at least some of them are welcome, and the rest are, it doesn't really matter. But Manchester Black, I do definitely like what they're doing with him in this season, and the twist in this episode definitely reinforces that. So that brings me to the James Olsen storyline of this episode, which I will talk about the climax of the episode after that, because that's when the two storylines collide. But for now, the James Olsen storyline, I mean, he's not really being very intelligent in this storyline up until the climax. I mean, nothing happens of interest, and every conversation he has, like talking about whether his reputation matters or not, his arguments don't really make any sense, and he even disagrees with himself later in the episode. Also, the whole storyline of the Children of Liberty manipulating him into doing this, it doesn't make much sense to me, because he runs this paper which is completely for aliens, and he could just say he was manipulated afterwards. It's pretty clear going off the video and the fact that he was kidnapped by the Children of Liberty that's definitely a possibility, if not a probability. So this storyline doesn't really make much sense to me, and this definitely wasn't the best part of this episode. In fact, it was probably the worst. So that brings me to the episode's climax, which is when everything went down. It started when Manchester Black betrayed Supergirl, which I already talked about that, and then they hung her up in the alien Statue of Liberty on the alien Ellis Island, which is, I mean, it was basically the exact same thing. But then one thing I'll say is that the power dampeners, they barely dampened Kara's powers. I could just imagine, like, maybe this was why the whole thing was shut down, but I could just imagine aliens walking in there and then their powers are only dampened a tiny bit, and if they are dampened, it takes like half an hour for that to happen. The aliens could basically do whatever they want, because Kara's powers, while they were dampened, they weren't really dampened that much. I mean, she was able to get free of the chains, she was able to climb up that wall and use her heat vision to an extent. I mean, they were dampened, but only like half. They basically made her powers half capacity. And one more thing that I don't really like about this climax is when Guardian noticed that Supergirl was in the building, in the Statue of Liberty, basically, he just puts on his helmet, which I don't really understand why they let him hold his helmet, because it makes him kind of immune to bullets to a certain extent, and then he just beats up the Children of Ability. Sure, he does get Todd's help, but I don't think he really needed it, and then he gets Manchester Black's help, but again, I don't think he really needed that. So I have to ask, why did he not just do this before? Why did he let them manipulate him into destroying the Statue of Liberty? And I'm saying the Statue of Liberty because I don't remember what it was called, but it's just basically the alien Statue of Liberty. So why did he let them manipulate him into doing that? He was willing to do that, but even though he could have just beat them up, I didn't really understand that. But those are the complaints about the climax. What I like about the climax is that it worked for the episode, like as a climax. The build up for this worked pretty well, and something that was pretty cool was Manchester Black joined back to the fight, and with this new costume that I talk about later, and helped Supergirl. And then the scene where Supergirl got her powers back, that was actually pretty cool. And then she flew up with the nuclear bomb, which is pretty insane that they have a nuclear bomb in there, and that was a cool scene. And the climax in general worked really well. There are some minor things I didn't really like about the climax, but in general it was a pretty great climax to this episode, which is not something I could usually say about this season. Also, another thing is that the ending to this episode with James thinking about whether or not he was right the whole time and then reconciled with Lena, that was a kind of cringy ending to this episode. I mean, this episode up until that point was pretty good, and then that ending, aside from everything with Manchester Black at the end, that ending was kind of cringy, just a little bit, but that's really a minor complaint because it's only like 1 or 2 scenes. But getting to the side storyline of this episode with Lena and this new character named Adam, and I think that this is what makes the episode so much better than most episodes of this season, if not any episode this season. What's crazy about that is that the Harry and Elle storyline up until this point was maybe the most boring storyline in the season, and I think it had only like one or 2 episodes to its name, but in those episodes it was really boring, and I couldn't care less, really. But in this storyline, it's completely different, because what it does, really, it brings a character that for some reason I care about after this episode, and uses him as a guinea pig, which is pretty crazy, and I don't think that's illegal for her to do, but anyway, she does it, and it's a great storyline because it's kind of emotional, actually. The conversations between the two, it works really well. The guest star actor, surprisingly good, and after this episode I actually cared about the character. But one thing I'd say is that I hate the fact that they actually killed him off. I think that was a huge missed opportunity, because if the Harry worked on him, he would have gotten superpowers, and maybe it only works on him or something, but he would have been a pretty good superhero. I mean, there are some superheroes in the comics named Adam, like Adam Strange, which this character would fit. I mean, the actor would fit, but then again, I don't think he has superpowers in the comics. Then there's also Captain Atom, who definitely this character does not fit that character, but I think in general they could have come up with something for the actor and the character, because it was a pretty great character. He's already in an origin story, he has a good backstory, but then they just kill him off, which is something that I think that's what they were going for, to make him a pretty three-dimensional character from this episode alone, and then to just kill him off as this kind of gut-wrenching thing, which is fine, and it worked pretty well. But I think that it backfired, because now I did not want him to die. I kind of liked him as a character, and I think they could have done something more with him. That being said, the actual storyline leading up to that death was pretty great, with some pretty emotional moments, a great guest star as the actor, but in general, it was a pretty missed opportunity in the end. So, in conclusion, this episode is easily the best episode of this season so far, which in general, not saying very much, but still it is a pretty good episode. The Supergirl Manchester Black storyline was kind of boring up until the twist, but then it made it interesting. James Olsen's storyline wasn't very good, but the climax with that and Manchester Black and Supergirl, that was pretty good as well. Like I said, the ending was kind of cringy, but the Lena storyline was a great storyline, although it was kind of a missed opportunity, but in general, more of a good than bad episode. So I'll give this episode an 8 out of 10, but let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.